Hey, leaders. In this episode of Leading Collaborative Response, Lorna and I sit down to talk about the importance of timing. When we're thinking about leading our collaborative response efforts or any of the elements or connected work that's related to it, we want to be able to think about timing. When do we speed up our efforts? When do we slow down? When do we pause in order to reflect and gather feedback? Each one of these are critically important when we're thinking about moving forward with fidelity in our collaborative response efforts. We have lots to share. Let's get started.
Are you a leader who is navigating the nuances of leading collaborative response in your school or district? Are you unsure of what collaborative response is? Are you looking to understand the critical role leadership plays when establishing and refining a collaborative response approach?
Collaborative response began as a grassroots approach to focus on the needs of students through a framework of collaboration. That approach has grown to a movement that is training leadership and education.
Through the Leading Collaborative Response podcast, Kurtis and I share our own experiences of leading collaborative response and lessons learned as we continue to learn and gain insight through the experiences of working alongside others. We also have the opportunity to engage in conversations with school and divisional leaders implementing the framework in their own organizations.
We know great leaders build great teams because that is what every child deserves. Subscribe to the Leading Collaborative Response podcast and join the thousands of schools seeing success for students through intentional and focused collaborative efforts. We wanted to share an idea that came up here this past week. Once again, that it does connect to things that we've discussed or shared before, but it really became clear as part of the conversation about being mindful or thoughtful about the importance of timing when it comes to what it is that we are doing within the school. So this obviously connects when we are talking about introducing, deepening, sustaining collaborative response, but really could apply to any engagement that or any initiative that you are doing within your school division, or even within your own classroom of thinking about. And it connects to concept we've talked about before, like piloting, like building critical mass, like planting seeds with who you consider to be champions in different areas. But timing is so critically important when we think about when do we take the next step.
And you know, this really is the foundation of why collaborative response is sometimes really hard to implement.
Because it's incredibly complex implementation.
It isn't the step one, first you do this and then you do this and then
wait 2 weeks and then do this.
And which creates great challenges for schools and districts, because it does need to attend to the space and place that everyone is in and addressing your own context at that time, which means that you need to be able to recognize where you are, understand where your staff are at, and then to make those decisions about what comes first and not rushing into things.
Absolutely. And I guess this is where it becomes really complex from a divisional level, is understanding that with a thoughtful approach to timing, schools are going to be at different places. And you and I hear it often when the schools come together on leadership days, and we'll often hear, we haven't gone as far as we'd like, or we haven't gotten as far as another school. But I think it's when you're thoughtful about timing that you recognize when is a time to push forward or introduce the next step, and when is a time to hold back and pause. This really goes with that concept we share continuously and live ourselves, is the idea of ready, fire, aim, that there is an appropriate time to fire, to move forward, and we have to continue moving forward. But then when we aim, it's understanding, when do we need to pause? When do we need to reflect? When do we need to hold off introducing a next step because we're just not ready yet?
Yeah, and even in that firing stage is, get yourself prepared and then just go to it, get started. But even in that firing stage is how much do we do to get things
Right.
started? We know
Do
it's
we
really
start with a small
important.
group to pilot first, or
Yeah.
move forward like that?
We know it's really important to be able to just go and get started on the work and we would adhere to that always.
Yeah.
Because again, we live that in our own worlds too.
Nike had it right. Just do it.
Just do it. But at the same time, being thoughtful in that firing stage is that you're not, we when we do an introductory session, then by the early part of the afternoon, you can see people who are just learning about collaborative response begin to be overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there are so many things,
so many
to think about,
steps that we have to consider.
Yeah, and they're not sequential.
Right.
So it is that place where when you start to think about all of the potential of what they could be doing and the potential of what they should take steps toward, is kind of a challenging space.
Well, and I reflect back early on some of my leadership experience and recognize upon reflection, I didn't understand timing well, because there would be points where I was ready to move forward something with the leader, but I wasn't taking a good temperature of the staff team to know maybe I should be holding back on this thing that I understand might be the next step, but we're not quite ready for it yet. I often share that within one school, we had built out timetables, and I had intentionally created some timetables where cross classroom grouping could occur, because I had ensured that in one consistent block, there wasn't things like preps being planned, use of the gym space. It was ready for grade level teams to start sharing, but I learned I'm not going to share that out yet with staff as a possibility, because it might overwhelm. It might create space of, oh my goodness, now we're going to start doing this next thing. But when it came to a place where teams started to say, what if we could group our students for guided reading together, it allowed us to be able to say, oh, actually, the timetable's ready for that. So that became an example of waiting for the staff team to ask and need, rather than pushing forward with that.
Which to me, as a leader, really points to the fact that you need to listen carefully to what your staff are saying. And when they are very stressed and are feeling overloaded, then perhaps it's a time to pause,
reflect, and see, maybe we take something off.
That doesn't mean stop.
Right. Absolutely.
That means pause for the time being, and perhaps
and it might even be pause and prepare in the background what could be that next step.
But really being thoughtful and listening carefully to where your staff is. And as you mentioned, when they start asking questions about certain things, then it's a natural next step to move. I think about the work in our school too, in terms of, when we started this work, we totally focused on creating collaborative structures and the collaborative team meetings specifically, because we thought that was the absolute key.
We'll be right back to continue this episode. Are you looking to maximize the collaborative capacity of your school or district? Are you wanting to take your professional learning communities or response to intervention work to the next level? Have you started the work in collaborative response but are looking to reignite or deepen your plans? We would love to have you join us at the 2025 Collaborative Response Retreat happening May 2nd and 3rd in beautiful Lacombe, Alberta.
Over the 2 days, we have an intentionally designed program of breakout sessions and sharing, along with supported team planning time to ensure that you walk away with a plan for introducing or strengthening collaborative response in your organization for the upcoming year. With a concentrated focus on team planning, networking, and individualized support for your school, the Collaborative Response Retreat is an outstanding opportunity to grow your team's understanding and implementation of this powerful support framework. We are also planning some fun time so you can relax and enjoy activities as a team in our historic community of Lacombe in central Alberta.
In addition, participants will gain access to an extensive repository of online resources to deepen their understanding and support ongoing implementation. Plan to join a growing network of educators dedicated to responding to the diverse needs of their learners. We've capped our attendance at 140 participants, so make sure to register early to secure your team spot. We're looking forward to seeing you in Lacombe in May.
Join the email list at bit.ly/25CR retreat. Wait. That's bit.ly/25CR retreat. Wait.
Join the list to access an early registration window before general registration opens. And if you register during that window, we're going to say thank you with an additional free gift valued at $200. Join the early notification list now. And now back to our conversation.
But over time, we started to get to a place where we were talking about the same students, and we were leaving out students we should be talking to. And it was a natural next place for us to say,
next revision,
you know what?
next enhancement.
We need to look at data now.
Yeah.
And then when we got to a space of, we've already talked about all of the things that we can do, what else is there? And really took us to that natural next step of the continuum of supports. We need to actually articulate what it is that we do and what we can do for students in areas.
So I think this has been one learning that has come in regards to knowing that when. And I have often said to other leaders, when we're at a point of friction, that might be the indication of the next step. And what I mean by that is exactly what you said. When staff says it feels like we're talking about the same students, okay, now we're ready to add the next layer or the next refinement. A specific example is I had a leader sharing, when we start our collaborative team meetings, I know it's important to have an overarching focus, but how long should we keep the same focus? And my response was, keep one focus area, such as, let's say, student well-being or literacy or numeracy, whatever is a key priority in your school that you want to impact. Put that in place and you don't change it. Keep the same focus until you get good at the process. When you feel like staff have reached a tipping point or that point of, can we talk about something else? Because it feels like we've got a really good handle on literacy. For example, there's a great point of friction to be able to say, yes, now let's go to the next. Even if in my mind, I've had an intention of being able to move to a cycling that will use a focus areas, for example, but not introducing that right away. Another great example is being able to say, when you first start a collaborative team meeting, start with something simple like, who's a student you want to celebrate and who's a student you want to a student of concern. And when it feels like it's the similar students coming up, that's a great point where now, like you said, we'll start to introduce data into it. If we try and do it all, we're going to overwhelm. So having a clear understanding of timing becomes important, and understanding the sequencing that we want to be able to look at.
And again, going back to, really listening and getting a feel for, what is your staff saying in terms of the teams and the work that you're doing.
So that actually reminds me of one school that we had worked with in Northern Alberta, where they had intentionally built review times right in relation to their collaborative response work, because they wanted to really ensure that there were pre-scheduled times where they will do that exact aim that we had talked about, to be able to get that voice from staff to say, are we ready for a next step? What do we need to adjust or refine? I thought that was really thoughtful of creating intentional spaces where we're going to gather in that feedback to help inform the timing of when's the next step.
Yeah, and we've had schools even work through that idea with exit slips too, at the end of their meeting, to be able to, identify how did that go and what are our next steps moving forward.
So with that, we'll throw, we have two different exit slips for collaborative team meetings specifically, one for a leader to be able to reflect and one for anyone involved in the conversation or reflect. We'll throw that in the YouTube description because it might be a resource value to gather some of that feedback to help inform the timing of next steps.
So we recognize that this is hard work and that it's not as simple as being able to follow one step after another, but we have seen and witnessed incredible growth for students, incredible growth for staff through collaborative response, and we would encourage you to stay true to the path.
Absolutely. And again, understanding that this is not intended to be, let's get everything established within the next 4 months. No, think of timing. When is the right point to introduce the next iteration or next step within the work? All right. We would love for you to reach out if you have any thoughts, ideas, reflections in relation to timing, things that you may have learned that we could integrate in to our understanding and sharing as well. So with that, we wish you all the best and look forward to connecting again soon.
Take care.
For more on collaborative response, visit jigsawlearning.ca or join the JL Insider to receive access to newly added resources and content. Make sure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast and the Jigsaw Learning YouTube channel to access past and upcoming episodes. Join us again to continue to build your own capacity and leading collaborative response in your context.